All right, I suppose we can start now. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Fighting Financial Crimes webinar series. This is Arda from Sanction Scanner. I'm at Sales and Business Development team. Before we start, I would like to give you a brief information about our products, how we support our clients with AML solutions. We have several products that we support our clients with AML compliance requirements such as AML screening, client screening, transaction monitoring, customer risk assessments, and UBO. Have been founded in 2014. However, within the last 5 years, we focused on only the AML regulations. Besides that, today we have a spokesman here with us, Anu from Dubai, who spent over 10 years in compliance projects and integrated system collaboration. Thank you so much, Anu, for joining our webinar. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you, Adil. Thank you.
We have some questions for you. I believe they will enlighten everyone's opinions upon transaction monitoring process. If you're ready, we can start.
Sure. So,
but first, go ahead, please.
So I'll just have an introduction, what we are always doing, what we are supposed
All
to
right.
talk about.
All right. Yeah. Perfect.
Transaction monitoring.
Yeah. Transaction monitoring. Like it's our topic today. Like machine learning and artificial intelligence concepts are in life, like in every perspective. And how do you think, like, how does machine learning and AI play a role in transaction monitoring?
Okay. So first, we'll talk about transaction monitoring. Transaction monitoring is a critical process in the fight against money laundering and terrorism financing. As we all know, I guess all of us are compliance professionals who have been working in the system or any of the financial institution for many years. So transaction monitoring is a very critical process. So why do we do transaction monitoring? Or what is transaction monitoring? Transaction monitoring is a constant monitoring of financial transactions to identify any suspicious or illegal activities that is happening through our system. So the illicit actors may try to misuse our system, try to do some illegal activities through our system, and they want to get away with those kind of things. And the UA regulatory landscape is currently changing, and the country itself is focusing on the compliance to international standards and requirements. So leveraging the AI and ML. So artificial intelligence and machine learning, that is very much crucial in this spirit. In order to, why it is crucial, AI and machine learning, what does it offer more than what we currently are having with the rule-based transaction monitoring? So that's where we'll start. The first question itself is on machine learning and AI. So I'll start with the sentence that AI and machine learning can play a significant role in enhancing AML transaction monitoring. Why? Traditional rule-based money laundering or AML monitoring systems often generate high number of false positives, and they are unable to identify the sophisticated money laundering techniques or patterns which the money launderers or the terrorist financiers currently use. So exactly. Machine learning and AI can address all these issues, all these challenges, like the high number of false positives and unable to identify the sophisticated techniques by having an effective and efficient approach in transaction monitoring. So we'll start with machine learning. How machine learning is good compared to our regular transaction monitoring system. So machine learning, the first and foremost thing is machine learning can analyze high volume of transactions or high volume of data. So high volume of data, and they can identify the system, the logic can identify the pattern, which we always, the human analyst always miss. So we won't be able to identify a pattern on a particular set of transactions, but this machine learning logics can identify pattern across a high volume of data, and they can come up with this pattern, and the system itself will be able to identify those patterns, and they will trigger the alerts as. So the alerts will be of more of a quality rather than having so many false positives in the system. As I said, machine learning always learns from high volume of data. So historical data can be entered into the system, high volume of data, system will comprehend that, analyze that, get some patterns over that, plus the regular transaction, the present and the future transaction. So the system is always ever evolving. The system itself tunes or calibrates itself and identifies those kind of patterns. And I'm not saying that human intervention will not be needed in future. Human intervention will be needed, but the system itself will train with the data what we feed into them. And how AI can help us. AI can particularly, so machine learning gives us a pattern of suspicious transactions. AI can really predict on true positives. Like these alerts can always closed as true positives in past. So these are the patterns which are identified by machine learning logic, and the AI can supplement those by reducing the false positives and increasing the quality of alerts what we are currently getting. Instead of looking into hundreds and thousands of alerts with no outcome, rather than closing it as a false match every time, we'll be getting true positives more. The quality of alerts will increase. As soon as the false matches reduces, the analyst can be implemented to do some other work rather than this operational activity like just closing, verify this alert and close this alert. So AI and machine learning can take out all those repetitive tasks, regular tasks what they are currently involved, and they can much more focus on the actual money laundering or terrorist financing issues or the transaction alerts. So that is definitely going to be a game changer in future. So many of the systems currently have this, and still it is on a learning stage only. So AI models have to be trained accordingly with the transactions and the alerts what we are currently doing.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your prompt answer, Anu. We also believe that AI like and machine learning has a huge impact on like suspicious activities. Other than that, I would like to ask your opinion. You from like a financial institutions perspective. You know, what are the some like common challenges that financial institutions face when it comes to implementing and like maintaining those kind of products?
No, okay. So I have implemented some systems in my previous organization and my current organization. So the main challenge what a financial institution face in implementing a new solution or a transaction monitoring system in this part is the first and foremost thing any financial institution will say is the quality of data. If you are not giving the proper quality or high quality data into the system, you cannot expect the system to do wonders and give you results, reduce the false positives and all. So the data quality is the first and foremost thing. If you put garbage in, you will get the garbage out. So the data
Exactly.
quality, yes. So the in compliance terms, we call them as the first line of defense, the FLAs who process the transaction. So we always instruct them to capture the correct details while onboarding a client. Capture the correct detail rather than putting some fictitious value or junk values in the system. So all these junk values and fictitious values will be there in the system, and the system will try to make out new scenarios based on those junk values. So all these effort what we have implemented will go to a waste. So data quality is the first and foremost. Next challenge what every financial institution see is the false positives. How to reduce the false positives? No system in this world is perfect. You can expect false positives, but you have to strike a fine balance in between. The false positives, you should not be working on much of the false positives, but you should not be missing a true positive alert also. So striking that fine balance is very much crucial in this thing. So a system as you implement is getting hundreds of alerts. We can't call a system which gives you unnecessary alerts as an effective system. So it is not an effective system. So you are getting a alert on every transaction. That is not an effective system. So the system should be calibrated properly, and that is in hands of the financial institution. So how you want to calibrate a system, tune a system properly without missing the true positives and not getting too many false matches. And the
That
third
comes to
thing
role
will,
to AI, I
yeah,
suppose, right?
yes. So even for AI, then the first point comes the data, what you have inputted in the system. So you have
Yeah.
to have a good system, the data, plus the third point will be the integration with the legacy system. Most of the financial institutions around the globe uses a legacy system. The core application what they use is purchased or maintained from years back. So they are doing enhancements on a system which is outdated years back. So the core system, the legacy system should also be capable of handling this kind of transaction monitoring or the machine learning, the AI. So all these are fancy words for a financial institution, AI, machine learning and all. So in order to achieve this proper alert thing, you have to work on that. You have to calibrate the system, you have to train the system, you have to get the correct data, you should have a proper source system. Source system is where the everything starts. So the transaction or the customer journey starts from the source systems. So it should be a proper one. And the next thing is the regulatory expectations. I won't term it as a challenge, but regulatory expectations. So regulators are, so you know, this part of the world, regulators are trying their best to combat terrorism financing and money laundering. So the regulations are getting stricter day by day. Day by day, new rule regulations are coming up, and the system should be capable to accommodate those kind of changes within a small span of time. So always it was like a dynamic, it was a static system which everyone used. Now it should be a dynamic system which is versatile or can be changed according to the latest rules and regulations. We can't wait for a year or 6 month period to change the system. So it should be dynamic, and the regulator expects those changes within a month or 3 months period. They don't want us to wait for 6 months or a year. So the system should be dynamic in order to have this, in order to meet the regulatory expectation. So I
I
guess
see.
those are the points. Yeah, those are the
Thank you
challenges what
so
I
much.
have faced.
Mhm. I see. Thank you so much, Anu. Also, I would like to talk about the phenomena of transaction monitoring. There are rule-based and behavior-based approach. Could you please explain the differences between them?
So for a rule-based and behavior-based scenario. So rule-based is the system or the scenario where it is pretty straightforward. You don't have to, you just have to define the data points, 1, 2, 3. If this matches, an alert to be generated. Like for example, I want to monitor the transactions which exceeds a particular threshold. I want to monitor any transaction which crosses this particular threshold. That is pretty straightforward. I'll define the customer type. If you want to have a different threshold for a corporate and an individual, so you'll have a different threshold. I'll define the customer type. I'll define the product. I'll put the value as whatever the value, 100,000. If the customer processes more than 100,000, an alert will be generated. So that's the very basic kind of a transaction monitoring, due to which we are ending up with a lot of false positives. The next thing is on the behavior-based monitoring. So behavior-based monitoring is something like, so we are assessing the customer behavior for over a period. Over a period, we are assessing a customer's transaction pattern, and suddenly there is a spike on the customer transactions. So he is not crossing that limit, but he is having a sudden spike in the transaction. I was sending 10,000 dirhams every month. All of a sudden, I'm sending 30 or 40,000. So that doesn't cross the other rule-based threshold, but it is a deviation from my expected behavior. So that happens, and all these alerts will not be a true positive. There may be a genuine reason for the individual to send a high value. It's okay. So an alert is generated. We always maintain that audit trail. An alert was generated. We identified that deviation and we checked why that deviation happened. So rather than just focusing on a particular single value, it defines or it revolves around the behavior of a customer.
Thank you. It's not also about like the risk approach when you consider it like for behavior-based approach, I suppose. Thank you so much, Anu. And like the last question from the customer's perspective, like how can financial institutions ensure that like the transaction monitoring systems are effective and like efficient without being overly burdensome? I mean, like troublesome on customers.
Okay, so in this case, financial institutions are always responsible to have an effective and efficient transaction monitoring system. That's it. Compliance and everything is dependent on a customer. So if the customer experience is not right, if every time the customer sends a transaction, it is put on hold for some verification, the customer will not come back to access your services again. So because he is having a bad experience with you. So rather than having a rule set in the system, one size fits for all, it should be based on the risk level of the customer, maybe the product the customer may be using, the services, or the counterparty. So it should not be always based on, the rule should not be based the rule should not be based on a customer as such. The rules should be segregated between the customers, and there should be a risk-based approach. The low risk customers, yes. If he uses a high risky product, yes, I want an alert. If he's a low risk customer, he's using a low risk product for me, I don't want an alert on that. With this kind of a calibration in the system, what happens is the analyst will not be overburdened with so many alerts in the system. So he will be only concentrating on quality things where the product is high or the customer rating itself is high. So it should be a risk-based approach for the alerts generation that will enhance the customer experience. Next thing will be use of technology. We have many tools available in this market now. So some are like the machine learning, artificial intelligence, RPA, robotic process automation. So those repetitive things can be automated. You don't have to overburden the customer experience, the customer to input the details. So in this part of the world, we have Emirates ID scanner. So if you put the Emirates ID, the data is actually fetched from the government side itself. So he don't have to manually input the details. Doing that, we will reduce the issues with the data quality also. The data is actually fetched from the government system. So with all those details, we will have a better quality of data. So the alerts will decrease. There won't be so many junk alerts in the system. False positives will be reduced. The customer experience can be enhanced rather than having the transaction suspended every time. So what we call it as a transaction suspension. So real-time scenarios are so many that we don't want to hamper that customer experience. Plus, yes. So it doesn't mean that we will allow all the customers to process the transactions in real time also. So there is a control plus only for the high risk customers or high risk products rather than going for a full product or full spectrum of customers.
Thank you so much, Anu, for your prompt answers. I would like to ask you our last question. Also, I would like to ask your opinions about UAE regulatory framework. How do you see the transaction monitoring evolving in the future? Can you predict anything? What advancements can we expect to see in the field, especially from UAE regulatory?
UAE as a regulator, yes. So for UAE as a regulator or UAE as a country has been a hub for new products, services. Now you have a dedicated regulator for virtual assets in UAE called as VARA. So UAE is trying to get all those kind of new product services in the country. So there will be new markets open, new products coming in. So the transaction monitoring will definitely get evolved with the technology and increasing regulatory scrutiny with the great use of machine learning. So again, I'll stress on the part of machine learning rather than going with this rule-based transaction monitoring system. The system should be enhanced or enabled to have these machine learning capacities where there won't be, where we can have a true positive alert rather than having a junk of alerts and we are working on it and we are just closing all these as false positives. So better scrutiny of alerts can be done with the AI and machine learning, improved data quality and management. So in future, we could see improved data quality and management. Earlier, for FIs in UAE, the customer registration was not mandatory for a transaction below 2080. The regulator has changed. So regulations have changed. So the data management has changed. So we have better data from the customer in the transaction and the cross-border remittances. We have travel rules. We should have the sender details while sending a transaction. So if we are receiving a transaction, there will be sender details in with them. So better control on data is now possible. And as one of the points I have earlier said, emphasis on the risk-based approach rather than having one size fit for all. Have risk-based approach in transaction monitoring. That will be available in future because the regulator is also stressing on the point of EWR, enterprise-wide risk assessment. You risk rate your customer, you risk rate your products, and focus on those particular key risk areas rather than having, jack of all and king of nothing. So particular those kind of risk-based approach is really necessary, and we will be seeing that in future, I guess. And the international cooperation. UAE currently is in FATF grey list. And international cooperation on those kind of factors where the regulatory bodies or the international corporations like FATF gives us a typology kind of a document where we have not seen such kind of a typology in this part of the world, but that is coming for you. So those kind of documents will definitely help you guys to better align your systems for what is coming in future.
Exactly.
So the international cooperation, the risk-based approach, plus the machine learning and AI. I guess these are the future things what I have seen, plus the data quality. That's what we are expecting in future.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anu. These were all my questions. Apart from that, we would like to have our audience's questions as well. Like, if you won't mind, Could you please like type your questions that you would like to ask to Anu to get to know from his knowledge?
Yeah, I have seen one as real estate. Yes. So
Or
currently the focus, yeah. So we always talk about FIs, financial institutions, when it comes to transaction monitoring or screening and all. Now it is not just FIs, TNFPs, the real estate, everyone, the precious metals, everyone is included in this. So the gold companies are now having compliance officers. It's not anymore the exchange house or a bank having a compliance officer. They are obligated to do sanction screening, transaction monitoring, and all those details.
may I also ask you again, is there anyone have a question you on transaction monitoring or like, you go ahead, Omar, please. You can also type your question. We have a question from Amit. You can see us, all right? He asks,
Yeah.
transaction monitoring tools, which one is the best in the industry?
So, Amit, I don't think it is based on the transaction monitoring tool as such. It is based on how you configure it in your system. So if the technology provider can give you 1, 2, 3 functionalities, that is well and good, but it will be on how you cooperate that in your system and how you calibrate it in your system.
Muhammad has a question. He asks like how to make documents red flags indicators related to SDR, SAR, or like AN local sanction list screenings.
So the transaction monitoring document, the process should be documented. There will be a document. Transaction monitoring document should be there available with you as a document as such, in which you will have to identify and mention the red flag indicators. There are so many typology documents available in the internet. Plus, the UAE government, the Central Bank of UAE also issues this typology document.
Dihan has a pretty interesting question, and he would like to know, could you please perhaps like touch on the client onboarding due diligence, how to incorporate that aspect in transaction monitoring?
So client onboarding. So client onboarding is a very critical thing. So if it is a corporate client or a retail client, while onboarding itself, we have to risk rate the customer based on the KYC details what the customer has given. Based on if it is a corporate, based on the industry what they deal in, how are they paying out the transactions? Are they paying it by cash or a check? The nationality, the country in which they are operating, which all the countries are they operating. So the risk will be based on the KYC of the customer also. That will definitely have an impact on the transaction monitoring tools. That risk-based approach in transaction monitoring, which I discussed earlier, will have an impact on the customer's risk also. Customer risk plus the products. Yes.
Also affects your approach, like according to your risk approach, like to know about the customer, like KYC process is one of the most important part, I suppose, as well. And like Sheldon has a question, and she asks, like, what are the major industries that you think that like will be immediately affected by the machine learning and artificial intelligence within the 3 years?
So we will limit our conversation to this transaction monitoring bit of AML only. But I don't think in any near future, human intervention is always needed in order to train the system. AI models, human intervention is needed. Machine learning systems will learn from the data, but human intervention will not, I don't think it will not be over at least within 3 years. Yes, human intervention will always be needed.
Uh, Thank you, Anu. We have a like pretty like a different question here. Tusan asks, like, if someone going to implement or willing to do any changes to their existing transaction monitoring system, what are the special elements they should concern? What
Mm,
should be their priority?
yes. So first you have to evaluate a vendor. If you are building a in-house system, that is different. Otherwise, evaluate the vendor. What all are the enhancements you are getting in? Plus, you have to, the main thing what every time everyone overlooks is what all are your source system transactions incoming. You may be using multiple systems to process a transaction, whether all these systems are integrated to the same core. So what happens is some institutions use multiple systems to process a transaction, one for registering a customer, one for a particular product asset. In those cases, they overlook the function and they will just integrate one functionality to the system, transaction monitoring system, rather than identifying all the source system, core systems. Plus, give a cooling period to any system. After implementing, give a cooling period. You see the transactions, the alerts which are generated, not the transactions, sorry, the alerts that are generated. 3 months, analyze it. How many alerts were actually turned into an STR or a SAR? So that is an alerts to STR SAR ratio, which many claim that it is not a scientific way of identifying the effectiveness of the system. That can be one part to identify or evaluate the system. But regular tuning and calibration is needed to any system to perform well.
Oliver would like to know, could you give
Mhm.
us an example on white box AI application regarding to sanction screening?
Sanction screening, we are talking about monitoring part of it, right?
I
So the
see.
white
Yeah.
box AI application, I am not so sure. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
I'll skip that.
How is UAE shaping to remove the gray list of FATF?
How is UAE shaping? I guess you are in financial services industry, right? FI industry, financial. So you are seeing so many regulations are coming up. Central bank is giving so many trainings to us. They are making the rules more and more stringent. So coming out of UAE, FATF grey list is very important for the country and the industries in the country. It's a business hub, or Dubai is particularly Dubai is a business hub. You can't be there in grey list for very long. The regulator is trying their best. They are coming up with new strategies, regulations. Plus, the regulator has given us a new project called as FIT, Financial Infrastructure Project, which consists of central bank digital currency, eKYC, instant payment platforms. So many new projects are coming up from the regulator or the country as in order to mitigate those risks. Central bank is also trying their best, and we all need to help them from our part also to have this
All right.
integrity in this.
Anu, what about this question? What is the best approach in dealing with monitoring parodies and like the pyramids as far as the legitimacy is concerned?
No, okay. So charity. So how to identify a charity transaction? That's the first and foremost thing. That can be implemented through multiple scenarios. If a customer is sending to a different nationality, for example, so we suppose that they are unknown to each other. So someone is sending to an unrelated party, and many to one is one of the scenarios. Many of the individuals are sending to one individual or one account. The transactions are sent by multiple senders to a same beneficiary. All these can be indicators of some suspicious activity. By analyzing those, we'll be able to identify whether it's an actual true positive case or not.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Anu. If anyone has any question, we can have over the chat. All right, Anu, I suppose no one has more questions, so we can end our. Actually, we just got a last minute
Yeah,
questions. If you wish, let's
yeah.
respond them as well, and then we can end our seminar. Amit asks like in current scenario, which area is more suspicious for like money laundering?
So I guess in this current scenario, the real estate company, the real estate sector, the real estate structure sector will be more susceptible for money laundering.
Also, could you please elaborate how risk categorization of customers are analyzed?
So in order to risk rate a customer, there can be multiple parameters in them. One of the parameter can be KYC risk. So while onboarding a customer itself, we have the KYC details, know your customer details in the system. Based on the KYC details, we can have a particular parameter based on the nationality, occupation. All those things can be added into the KYC risk of the customer. After starting the business relationship with the customer, they start to process the transactions. Then comes the dynamic thing. KYC is something static. Those values change, but not very frequently. So the dynamic thing comes when the customer starts to process transactions. What is the rating for his transactions as such? Is he using high value, high risk products for us? How is he paying the transactions? Is it through a bank account or cash? Is he processing high value transactions? Is he violating any of the scenarios, real time or post facto scenarios set in the system? All those can add to his risk. So KYC risk will mostly be static and the other risk will be dynamic. Based on the overall risk of the customer, we based on the overall risk of the customer, yeah, considering the static and dynamic values, we can have a risk score against each of the customer. And anytime the customer crosses that particular threshold, he will be deemed as a high risk customer based on your risk rating parameters or methodology, which is used in the financial institution. As soon as a customer changes to a high risk, his transactions are supposed to be monitored. The real-time transaction should be blocked. You should ask for additional details if deemed suspicious. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Anu, for your all of answers. It was so nice to having you here. I believe you enlightened most of our questions, like most of our question marks upon transaction monitoring. And beside that, everyone before leaving, could you please take a note that you can scan the QR and request a demo so we can introduce you our AMS solution products such as AMS screening, which provides client screening, transaction monitoring, where you can create rules as Anu mentioned, and apply those to the transactions in real time. Apart from that, customer risk assessment and UBO products would help a lot for your know your business, know your customer process. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. Please stay tuned. We'll be enhancing our future webinars in our classrooms. Thank you, Anu, again for joining us. It was so nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you all the guests for joining. Thank you, Sanctions Canada. Thank you, Adra, for having me in this platform. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.